Hi, I'm Lisanne Miller with W, Cushing and Company, and it's Third Thursday with Lisanne. The topic today is our two favorite subjects this time of year, leaves and trees. And don't forget your latest issue of Rug Hooking Magazine, Leaves and Trees. So we did leaves last year a little bit, but we're going to go back and revisit the leaves a little bit. Here's some maple leaves, and when you look at the maple leaves, and you've got a lot of examples for colors this year, you can go out in the yard and pick them up. A lot of times people don't want to put predominant veins in, but if you look at leaves this time of year, they can be chartreuse, bright yellow, bright gold, and these are bright gold. Then we have a little bit echoes of red, a little bit even of taupe, and then we go out almost to a pear or a lime green. This is the same pattern, okay, a maple leaf, where they've used a bright gold. And this is a great way to use your scraps, pick your bright colors out. And in here, they've done a real dark green, medium, and out to light. But here's the key on this one. They've tipped, not all the way, just here and there, one or two little places, they have tipped it with gold. And that gives it just that little edge so it doesn't fade away on the background. On here, they didn't tip it, but in order not to fade into the background, a simple off-white line was used to outline the leaf in different places to make it pop up. This is an effective use of outline so that when it comes up from the background, you can actually see all the little points of the leaves. We don't want them to fade in. We want it to be predominant and be a leaf. Another way to do leaves, these are the oak leaves, and a lot of you have seen this is our fall runner. A lot of things is you take and you'll use the same color but shift the veins around. So this was one piece of wool. These were hooked in sections. So the vein was put in first, and if you put the vein in first, the vein will always recede. Not greatly, but it will recede because as you hook around it, it gets smaller. So here is our dark green, our lighter green, and this was all one piece of wool. We got a little brighter over here, and it makes an effective leaf. It doesn't make it as solid as the maple leaves. This right here, we put in a nice purple, and then we used a spot dye and just hooked the spot dye around and let the colors fall where they would. Same here, this had more plums, so we used gold. And in here, we really didn't need a predominant vein. We just used the two colors, combined them into one, and the same here. So sometimes the veins will come out, be predominant. Sometimes they don't have to be, and you still know they're a leaf. Other leaves, like in our pine woods, this has two types of leaves here. In here you'll notice, and at first you think, well, why is there a pink, this is a pink plaid as the veins? Well, there's such sharp colors into here that this really makes the veins stick out and allow this color to be used in this leaf. So this one has the brown to pick up the pine cone. Down here, here's your predominant dark brown vein, and then it's just done old-fashioned style like they used to do in blocks. Here's a block of color, here's a block of color, there's a block of color. Here it's the same thing. Predominantly brown, you've got the red, you've got the almost pink color, and then the green, blocks of color. In the older antique rugs, that's how they did their leaves. They just put in blocks of color. There wasn't a lot of shading, there wasn't a lot of fingering, but the effect is very, very effective because you have the acorns which pick up these colors. And the brown was used as the vein in some of them to pick it up off the pine cone and the acorn caps. Other leaves can be very simplistic. And in this case, these are just modeled. This was a little spot dye. Colors from the bird's wings were used in the veins. Some are a little more predominant, but not all of them, so that you get the wispiness of these little leaves that don't compete with the birds, but blend with the birds. And then you can see, here is one color, and then here is your other color. Here is a darker one up top. And again, not fingered, just filled in. so it's hooked unevenly, and then the next color is filled in, and then again, like we showed on the first one, it's tipped in a different color, slightly different color, to stand up from the background. Now we can get more simplistic in our leaves, such as in the partridge in a pear tree, where we've just used two colors. We've split every leaf exactly the same with the same color, and then we used about 3 different colors. One side is one color, one is the other, one, and we just move these colors around. We didn't want a lot of splay or a lot of emphasis put onto these leaves because number one, it's a small piece, and the pear and the partridge were more important. But you get the effect of the leaf, but only with a few colors. Holly leaves are somewhat the same way. So when you do holly leaves, a lot of times people stay away from color in the holly leaves. But in this case, it's outlined in a darker bright blue, like the candle, because it's on a bright red background. So this is broken up into different sections. Here's your vein, and then comes the outline. This is the sequence of rug hooking. So you have your vein, then you outline it in the blue. Then your next row is what I would call a Christmas green or a holly green, and whatever's left is the lighter green. So you don't lose the points, you know it's a holly leaf, and by doing it in sections that way, it's a more effective way to do a holly leaf. Here, the vein was put in blue, and like what we saw in a partridge in a pear tree, the leaf was just split. One side is the light, one side is the Christmas or holly green. Here, the yellow was used from the glow, and that was put in, one side with the Christmas green, then finished out. Then the lighter green was put over here with the Christmas green. The colors are a little different for holly leaves, but very effective, and they're just moved around. There's only the 3 colors, and they're moved around, and I think it's a very effective look. Here's the same mat hooked again, and this is our candle glow mat. So this is softer, it has the blue, it's a softer glow, a softer candle. So they used a texture. A lot of times a great texture for a vein makes it there, not predominant, but a very soft look. So the vein's put in, then the outside is outlined, and then the third color is filled in. While it looks like it's shaded and fingered, it's not. And that's the same thing here. You have your vein, you have your outline, then you fill in with your third color. And with the veins being a texture, they look a little different in each one. So here is 2 great examples on how to hook holly leaves, and I'm going to bring in this third one, which is a combination of these 2. The blue is brought in again to give depth. So this is actually where the holly leaves are split right in half. There is no predominant vein, it's just the color. So the dark Christmas green was hooked, and as you can tell, it was hooked like that. The outside color was hooked in. Again, outside color here hooked in. The third color was just filled in. So it gives you the holly leaf, but it's in a different place. This Christmas green acts as the vein or the split on each of these, just like that. So that is the holly leaves. Let's take a quick look at what we can also do where we don't use green leaves and we want to use some primitive. Here are some leaves on our welcome rug, and here the leaves hardly have any green at all. Here is your green vein, but we've used a texture, 2 textures and a stripe. And by alternating these 3 colors, we've created the leaves all the way across this, but we've just put them in a different order each time. Sometimes we did bring in the green and added that color, but it was just hooked this section, this section, this section. Same thing up here. This was hooked first, then the red ring, then the gold, and then the different red. So as you can see, all the different variations from just using these colors, and when we needed something a little extra, we picked it up from the vine and put it in. So with just 3 colors, and sometimes adding the 4th, you get all these different looks from 4 textures. Now we're going to take a quick step back, and we're going to look at a different way to do it without texture, without dye, by using solid wools. Just plain solid wools. Now this pattern here, you can see the dark brown. These are not dyed, these are all as is, either solids or somewhat of a texture, but mainly just solids. And these, the veins put in, here comes your purples, here's your other your lighter purple on the side, and then the greens are just put in sections. Here it's a more sage green, the lighter plum colors. Now this one is really just striped. This is one where the vein was put down the center. One side has the darker, one side has a little bit of lighter, but these were just striped in. These were all solids and little pieces and just striped in different areas, filled in different areas till the leaf was filled in, and in the end, you have a beautiful leaf. Same with here, same with here. When you do it this way, you get a different look with every one that you do. This one is more predominant in the plums. This one is more predominant in the sage. And this one I haven't gotten to yet, but as you can see the process of it, I had put the vein in and then I striped the colors. And this is another one where I'm striping the colors. Salmon, a little bit of teal blue, and they're just being striped in. And then I would put the lines in over here, and now, as you can see the outline, I'm just going to stripe in colors. And whatever is left over, I'm just going to fill in. On this side, again, the same colors, a completely different look. There's more of the darker green striped in. This is striped in a little bit differently as well. This was done more in a block format. Same veins as the others, but every look, just like a leaf, is a little different. This one is completed as well, and if you notice, there's not as much of the lighter color. This is more of the darker color, and it does look like a skinnier leaf by doing it that way. And this has more of the sage green in it, where this makes the brown more predominant. So each corner has the leaves, and while they're similar, they're all hooked completely different, just like leaves in real life. Now, a really primitive way to hook leaves is a great way to hook leaves. If you have a lot of texture, you want to do hand torn, you want to do a wide cut, this is a way to do it. So in here, here's a nice leaf. Here we have a texture, wide cut. This was put in, the vein was put in, little bit of a highlight here, then it was just filled in. On this side, this was a really heavy texture and a solid wool, so it was outlined and filled in. The wool did the work here. And then this could be brought in over here as it is down in this one and some of the others, but you can get the overall look of the leaf that way. These leaves, although they touch, you can see the difference, and it's the direction of hooking. The veins are all the red to match the other. This is a very primitive rug, and then they all are just filled in with textures. So this is a very old rug, and it's more of a primitive rug, primitive leaves. The next leaves that we're going to talk about are right behind me. Now this is a combination of striped leaves, spot dyes, kind of somebody went through, and solid. As you can tell, this red is very solid. This was a dyed, probably a little leftover piece. It's very solid. There may be one or two others, but the background is camel. It's very calm. It stands up very nicely. You can see all the points. With the yellow one, it kind of faded over time. The green is predominant in the veins, so you get the idea. Here, they outlined the veins to make it a little different, but again, it's very solid. This was probably a spot dye, a little bit of a spot dye, and this is all the green, fades in a little bit, but the spot dye gave you the look of the leaf. So here we've used a spot dye to fill in. Here's where we've done more of the stripe and solids. So the stripe and solids is just little pieces wherever they meander to. Let's call it higgly-piggly, and then they filled in here. This is very stripy, just single lines, and this one again is filled in blocks, while this one is a solid leaf. So this rug encompasses all the different techniques. And this one, I guess they really felt like either they ran out of the wool or they really needed it to show up, so they popped in some of the reds to show it up. So that is, again, an older pattern, an older rug, but many different techniques used by the rug hooker to get the leaves to look the way she wanted them to. So after we have leaves, there's always trees. Trees are really fascinating. We love trees. Everybody likes to hook trees, and there's many different ways to hook them. So the first one we're going to talk about is the tree sampler. This is a great way to experiment with your color, and as you can see, the trees, this tree is teal, but the background softens it. It's a great way to test your color palette, to test colors amongst each other, to see how you like to hook them, make it look like stained glass, to try different levels of a background, and your typical brown tree with the little, I'll call it a squirrel hole in it. And when you hook trees like this, the funny part is you're using the branches to change the color. So when I wanted to put the purple or the pink into this, I would use the branches almost like little puzzle pieces, and I would hook where I wanted the color. In this one, I used the branches to separate the value of the color. I went across with one color, then the lighter color, then the real pale. A good example again is this was my base color. I used the tree branches to separate each color going across. It makes it a more even break, and it allows you or your eye to look at the colors coming up. This is really fun to do. It's a fun way to start playing with trees if you haven't hooked trees, and to test different color palettes that you may like. So this is the tree sampler. Another way to hook trees is in the rock wall. Back here, this is what we'll call pixelated trees. When you look at it, the trees are there. These were done with little different colors. Some were spot dyes. This was all left over and actually hooked with the salvage edges of dyed pieces. So it was just cut and hooked. Now, when you hook trees that are in a line like this or in a skyline, the key to a tree is that you can go out and look, is the sky behind it. When you hook a tree, the definition of the tree is the sky behind the tree. Whether it's all branches, whether it's a fall tree, one turning to fall, the sky makes the definition of the tree and allows the tree to actually become a tree. Without sky, it looks a little coloring book, and it doesn't work as well. Another tree where the sky was important, and this here, these are again just branches, and not every piece of this is the same color. The trunk was a texture. I may have run out, and everything was just hooked in different directions. Then I came back in and filled in the sky. And by filling in the sky, I could do dark to light, light to dark. I could fill it in with the dyed wool, and that's what defined the branches. When you hook a piece like this, your tree is going to look very chubby or very big until you put the sky behind it, and then it becomes the trees in the winter. And that allows you to do that and look very pretty. As you can see, this is more blue, this is more gray, this is almost black and off black. So every tree is definitely a different color but has an overall look. Let's talk about Christmas trees for a quick minute. when you hook Christmas trees, there are many different ways to hook it, and we're going to discuss more of this along when we talk about snow in December, in our December Thursday video. But as you can see, the wisp down, this is a dip dye, and by hooking down, and you keep hooking down with the color and just hooking across, the snow is put in, and then this little branch is just put into that. So the dark, the medium, the light, which is a dip dye, and then the snow. And it's always lighter at top and darker down the bottom when you're hooking a pine tree. Also, the other definition is when you come in the sides with your background, or whatever your background is, and that creates the bough. That is just as important. And I'm going to go back again to this rug to show you another simple tree. These are simple trees. They're hooked in triangles. They were hooked in one piece of wool. But what defined them was when you put the sky in behind it. They didn't look like triangular pieces anymore, but they became pine trees, and that is important. Another way to hook trees and to show just how much you need your sky, here are different trees. The trunk is many different colors. It's not very solid. There's different colors combined. But this tree in particular, in between, here's your little branches, a little bit here and there, maybe 5 or 7 loops, and then here comes the blue. Your blue's coming in, blue is coming in, so that defined, the sky behind is what defined the tree. Same thing over here. And don't be afraid to put the sky by the trunk too. That allows the trunk to also show up. So there we are. There's another set of trees and how to hook them. And after this set of trees, we'll go on to some wools that would be effective. This has 3 sets of trees in it. Here's our first one right here, and there's many different colors. This is the tree of many different colors, and it comes up and the branches change, the branches wrap, and as the branches wrapped, all different colors were put in to separate it, okay? So the tree was put in first, it was hooked first, it's not very heavy, but there it is, and then the branches were used to separate the different colors of sky. And then here we come in with our pine trees, and I'm going to show you how the pine trees were hooked. I hooked the pine trees this way, just like that. Every once in a while I'd hit in a little bit of sky, come in with the sky, come in with a little trunk, and came down with the sky to make this uneven but look like a row of pine trees. Keeping it this way, I took a spot dyed piece of wool for the fall foliage, and I put all of that in. I hooked that in a more rounded way, filled into the pine trees, just like that, filled in all the way this way. And that was how I put the 3 layers. Here's 1, here's 2, and there's the sweeping layer. Now sometimes a tree needs to stand up from its object. In this case, it needs to stand up from the barn. When it was hooked flat into the barn, it faded in and it did not look like a tree. So this was sculpted. This tree was sculpted, not Waldeboro, just sculpted. So it came up, but then I hooked the branches flat so that your eye could finish it. These are not sculpted, but the trunk is so that it stands up. Here is just a tree that is hooked in a multitude of colors just to show that it is there. But again, this is sculpted to come up from the barn, and so that you can see it and it didn't fade into the barn. So, what are some wools that work? Let's look at some tree wools first. These all make great trees. These textures all make great trees, from dark to light. This in particular would make a great tree because you've got your warm brown, your darker brown, and your green. This is the best brown texture, and when you pair it with pear wood and maybe add a little caramel, there's a great tree. Caramel by itself would make a great tree because it has so many different colors in it. It'll also make great veins in leaves because of all the colors that are around it. If you want more of a gray ash, this is Oyster Bay. This would work because you've got your darker colors into it and a little bit of orange. A dark tree, here you go, but you've got a little bit of green in it. This is Whiskey Barrel, and that little bit of green will pop up unexpectedly, but would work where you would want it. So these are all great wools for trees in textures. For leaves, we have a bunch of different textures that would work. This is wasabi. You get the oranges and then the yellows. You can split it apart. This would pair very well with a dyed piece. So this could be the vein, and then you would just cut and hook in a spot dye, and all the colors would pop. Okay, and that's a spot dye, but we're using a texture for the vein. These are great greens, sweet pea, and key lime. The herringbone in this case has the lighter color and then the darker color. Again, for leaves, for pine trees, for veins, for whatever you would like. If you like this, this can be the vein. Then this, which is falling leaves, could be the leaf, the spot dye. Or this, or you could go with wasabi, whatever you'd like. But this you could just pull and hook, and because it's a spot dye with all the colors in it, you would just pull and hook and it would make the leaf. You could add a red in for the vein. You could add in blue spruce, but blue spruce seems to fade out. If you wanted it predominant, wasabi would stand out. Again, they're great. This makes a great blue spruce Christmas tree, just as is. Sage also makes a great leaf. All of these combined, this could be the vein, the three greens would be great. This would make a great fall leaf. These spot dyes as well, you can just pull and hook. There's a lot of color in here, and when you're trying to pull for a vein and you want the vein to be predominant and you just want to hook a leaf and have the colors pop up, pick a color like this is the apricot color and bump it up a few values and make that the vein, or the lighter green. Chartreuse would be a great color for this as well. This is another one where the wool just keeps changing. You can use a bright yellow, you could use a plum, and these would really make great fall leaves or great trees. This would also make a great tree trunk just pulled and hooked. This would make great holly leaves as is. This is Bayou Lagoon. It's one of our newest dyed wools, and we did it to start the holiday season when we start our holiday season for holly, because it's got the blue and the green mixed in, and you could really put blue spruce with it and start your holly leaves that way. So they are just some of the different wools that you can use. You can use your stash and put them in lines the way you would like. There's a million different ways to hook leaves, but these will give you a good start if you don't know where you want to start. So I hope that this was helpful. It's a great time of year. Like I've said before, go ahead outside, pick out leaves you like, then match your wools from your stash, and then just start hooking. A lot of times you can order the patterns, the maple leaves. You can lay the leaves down on your linen and trace them. Same thing with your trees. So have fun, enjoy the fall, and I hope everybody is well. We'll see you next month. Bye-bye.